YouTube, what is going on? Scenario Talk 23. I'm back with another video. Before we get into the video, YouTube, I need you to hit the like, comment, and subscribe button. Turn on that post notification bell while you at it. Today we got a true crime story. We got the mom who strangled 3 kids to death. After breakdown, let's get straight into it.
Our community is, of course, reeling from the tragic events of last night.
Imagine a murder so sinister that it brings a homicide detective to tears in public. This is Lindsay Clancy. In January 2023, she ended the lives of her 3 children. How could she do this? And did anyone see it coming? Could these horrible murders have been prevented? And why is Lindsay's case so divisive? We'll explore these questions and many more in today's video. But before we go on, I must warn you, we'll be discussing mental health with an emphasis on postpartum depression, the dangers of mind-altering medication, child abuse, and death. This is the full story of Lindsay Clancy. Lindsay Clancy was born in 1990 in Wellington, Connecticut. After graduating from college, Lindsay started working as a nurse in a Massachusetts hospital. Around this time, she met the love of her life, Patrick Clancy. The two hit it off immediately, and they knew they wanted to start a family together. Before long, they got married and moved to the town of Duxbury, a half-hour's drive away from Boston. By 2022, the young couple had 3 children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan, all born 2 years apart. Lindsay and Patrick's extended family was ecstatic about their life. They seemed like the model family. They were young, fit, and always there for their 3 children. The Clancy family really seemed as happy as a family of 5 could be. And Lindsay always had an impressive amount of energy and a good disposition. Her husband admired her for it too. But this is precisely what makes the following events especially shocking.
She do this to her kids, man? Everything looked like it was going so straight.
Rental house regrets?
That's what I'm saying. Like, you never know what's really going on, bro. Like,
for over 50 years, Walden University has been advancing remote learning to give you more.
On January 24th, 2023, Lindsay took 5-year-old Cora to the pediatrician. After their appointment, they headed back home, and Lindsay played with Cora and Dawson outside, making a snowman. Lindsay was very proud of the result. She took a picture of her kids and the snowman and sent it to Patrick and her mom. At 4:02 p.m., Lindsay searched on her phone about the kids' Miralax, a type of laxative, and a takeout restaurant called 3V.
Immediately after doing that, she used Apple Maps on her phone to determine how long it would take someone to drive from her home in Duxbury to 3V restaurant in Plymouth. So she would know how long someone would be gone if they ran that errand.
At 4:47 p.m., Lindsay searched the CVS website. Then she called the Kensington Pharmacy and asked to speak with the manager about Miralax. But here's the thing. Lindsay wasn't planning on buying the meds or going to the restaurant herself. Just before 5 p.m., Lindsay sent a text to Patrick, who was working from his home office in the basement. "I didn't cook anything, it's been a long day." Lindsay asked her husband to go to CVS and get the meds, and then pass by the 3V restaurant and get food for the family. Lindsay ordered the food on the phone, and Patrick just had to drive by and pick it up. At 5:15, Patrick left. 15 minutes later, CCTV footage showed him inside the CVS pharmacy. At 5:33, he called his wife, but she didn't pick up the phone. She called him back a minute later, and the two exchanged a couple of sentences about types of medication. Patrick felt like she was in the middle of something, but her voice sounded normal, and he didn't worry at all. After buying the meds, Patrick drove over to 3V and picked up the food. By 6 p.m., he was home.
When he arrives home, the first thing he noticed was the silence. He did not see or hear the defendant or the children.
Imagine how strange that is when you live with 3 small children.
you know
Patrick called Lindsay again and again, but no one answered, and the kids were nowhere to be found either. So he began searching frantically throughout the house. When he saw the bedroom door had been locked, he began to panic. He broke in and saw blood on the floor and an open window. While calling 911, Patrick stumbled down to the backyard, where he found his wife in a very bad state. Her wrists and neck had been slashed, and she had suffered a serious fall. Her wounds were already dried up, and she was still conscious.
Neck injury, neck laceration. She's conscious at the time. We're going to check with my plate. It was over a 20-foot fall.
Still on the phone with the emergency services, Patrick asked Lindsay where their kids were. That's when she simply said, "In the basement."
Reese, go to the basement, Cap. Go down. Go to the basement.
As the first ambulance was already rushing Lindsay to the hospital, Patrick went to the basement with trembling legs. That's where he found his 3 children, strangled with exercise cords. Even if you saw this scene in a horror movie, it would be too much. But imagine being the children's father.
He can then be heard screaming in agony and shock as he found his children. His screams seem to get louder and more agonized as the time passes. He removed the bands and begged them to leave.
What's even worse, all 3 kids were still alive when they were found. They had all been aware that their beloved mother was the one who took their lives. Cora and Dawson died within hours at the hospital. 7-month-old Callan struggled for 3 more days before he died too. Even the most seasoned homicide detective couldn't contain his tears when he had to speak about this to the media.
Our community is, of course, reeling from the tragic events of last night. Our thoughts are with the family at this difficult time, and they have our deepest sympathies. Many people have been contacting each of our respective departments about the well-being of our first responders and what people can do to help to support them.
Indeed, it wasn't just Patrick who was left in a state of utter shock. It was the police officers, paramedics, and all those who found the poor children in that state. And then it was everyone who heard about this horrible accident. Yeah, Lindsay was not only a mother, but a nurse. Her whole career was based on helping others. But with her unconscious in the hospital fighting for her life, no one could ask her the million-dollar question. Why? While she was still in the hospital, Lindsay Clancy was charged with murder, strangulation, and assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. In February 2023, she attended her first hearing via Zoom from her hospital bed. Lindsay suffered great damage to her spine from the fall, and she will likely be paralyzed forever.
That the defendant be held without bail based on the facts of the case, the strength of the Commonwealth's case, and the potential penalty.
According to the district attorney, as she regained consciousness, Lindsay became immediately aware of the grave situation she was in.
On Friday, January 27, 2023, using an erasable whiteboard because she was still temporarily intubated, one of the first questions that Lindsay Clancy asked was, "Do I need an attorney?" She knew that she had murdered her children, and she had the clarity, focus, and mental acumen to focus on protecting her own rights and interests.
But her defense attorney paints a different picture. You see, Lindsay doesn't deny having clarity now. But before the murderers, she was suffering severe postpartum depression, and she was on an extreme number of meds. Between 50 and 80% of women who give birth go through postpartum depression, if only for a short time. This manifests as mood swings, feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and depression. About 17% of these women can experience severe symptoms, and sometimes these include postpartum psychosis. As you probably know, a psychotic episode implies hallucinating and disconnecting from reality. At the end of September 2022, shortly after giving birth to Callan, Lindsay began feeling anxious about returning to work at the hospital. That week, she saw 2 psychiatrists. Lindsay was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, but here's the catch. Between October 22nd and January 23rd, Lindsay was given a total of 13 psychiatric medications. Prozac, Klonopin, Zoloft, Trazodone, and a myriad of others were prescribed to her in an attempt to cure her anxiety, depression, and insomnia. But even taking one mind-altering drug can be dangerous to your mental health and general well-being. Imagine taking 13, each of them psychiatric, or in other words, mind-altering. According to Patrick, Lindsay would sometimes take 4 different meds in a single day. Not only did the meds not help, but Lindsay started having suicidal thoughts. Lindsay's lawyer, Kevin Reddington, told the judge, "This is not a situation, Your Honor, that was planned by any means. This is a situation that clearly was a product of mental illness." But here's the plot twist. In December, Lindsay was evaluated by a psychiatrist, and they ruled out postpartum depression. So postpartum psychosis was clearly off the table. After the murders, Lindsay told Patrick, who was still in a state of shock, that a voice told her to take their babies' lives.
The defendant used Dr. Zeisel's cell phone to call her husband. She left a voicemail stating that she loved him. Yesterday, on February 6, 2023, at 10:09 a.m., she again used Dr. Zeisel's cell phone to call her husband. This time he answered, and during this call, the defendant stated, that after he left the house that night, she killed the kids because she heard a voice and had, quote, a moment of psychosis.
The Constitution has been amended
I
27
can't say
times.
what I really want to say because
That may sound like a law.
But I never been that.
When
doing that
Patrick
like this.
asked Lindsay to
All these
describe the
voices in my
voice,
head
she said it was a
stuff,
man's
like-
voice urging her to take the children's lives, then her own, as this was her last chance. But this was brand new information to Patrick. He thought he knew his wife, yet she'd never mentioned having hallucinations or psychosis in the past.
Patrick Clancy told the police the defendant had never heard voices before. He also told the police the defendant had never used the word psychosis to him before. The first time she used that word psychosis was when she was with a doctor hired by defense counsel and using his cell phone.
Was this a defense trick meant to get Lindsay a lighter sentence? Insanity always works in the defendant's favor if they can prove they couldn't tell right from wrong when they committed the murder. Here's another clue that might point you in that direction. Lindsay even kept a diary, and she never wrote about psychosis or hallucinations. Her own personal diary, filled with thoughts on her family and lists of the drugs she took, never mentioned strange episodes or any sort of psychosis. And who lies in their own private diary? Before sentencing Lindsay, Judge John Canavan must decide whether Lindsay had planned on murdering her children or not.
The defendant actually wrote a note on her phone on October 25th, approximately 3 months before this happened, October 25th, 2022. She wrote, quote, "I think I sort of resent my other children because they prevent me from treating Cal like my first baby. And I know that's not fair to them, I know that. I was feeling so depressed last evening when Cora and Dawson came home from school. I know it runs off on them, so we had a pretty rough evening. I want to feel love and connection with all of my kids."
But that day, Lindsay also wrote that she wanted more kids. Are these the words of a conflicted person who, much like any mother, goes through a range of different feelings and moments? Or are these the words of a cold and calculated killer who saw her kids as obstacles to her happiness? The children's autopsies were truly dreadful. It turns out, to strangle someone with an exercise band, you have to pull it hard for over 4 minutes to actually cause death. And Lindsay did this 3 times.
Therefore, she had to strangle each of them to unconsciousness, and then make sure the bands were squeezing their
that's
little
the
necks
ones
for
that's like
several minutes.
this.
She could have changed
That
her
shit,
mind at any
like-
point during that time and removed
Like, you
those
gotta
bands.
realize this is not like jumping rope, like on some, you pull it, these shit's gonna stretch out. So she's doing that and it's stretching out, so it's no pressure. So she gotta literally keep pulling. But that shit don't make no sense, bro. I don't want to hear nothing about no voices, this and that. Like, you did that shit through, because you didn't do all of them at the same time. Goodness, man, this shit don't be making no sense.
What's more, how could Lindsay's murders have been impulsive when she sent Patrick away that afternoon? Not only did she send him away, but an hour before, she'd Googled the pharmacy and restaurant and calculated the time it would take for him to get from one to the other. According to the prosecution, Lindsay didn't take advantage of the situation. She created the situation so that she could kill her children.
She did so with deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity. Quote.
On January 28th, Patrick wrote, "The shock and pain is excruciating and relentless. I'm constantly reminded of them. And with the little sleep I get, I dream about them on repeat. Cora, Dawson, and Callan were the essence of my life, and I am completely lost without them." It's hard to even put such pain into words, and it's hard to imagine what Patrick must have been going through at this moment. The only thing left to do now is to find an appropriate sentence for Lindsay. But her case sent shockwaves throughout the country, as people have had very differing opinions when it comes to the deserved punishment. On the one hand, you have clear evidence that Lindsay planned to take 3 innocent lives and sent her husband away, knowing that he would protect his children with his life. In Massachusetts, that's punishable by life in prison without the possibility of parole. On the other hand, this is the age of mental health awareness. Postpartum depression and anxiety are serious problems that lots of people experience, and mind-altering medication is famously harmful. In other words, perhaps these horrific murders could have been prevented if Lindsay had received appropriate medical help. But the more doctors she sought out for mental health issues, the more meds she was prescribed. Who knows how things might have panned out if the 13 drugs hadn't been involved. Perhaps we'll never know. Lindsay's next court date is scheduled for May 2nd, 2023. But it's safe to say, whatever her sentence, it will bring little justice for the children and little closure for poor Patrick. Thanks for watching, you guys. Let me know your thoughts on the story in the comment section. And before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.
It's like, I want to know what else Patrick got to say. I want to see him talk. Because it's like, how can you feel? It's like, how can you feel when your wife just killed y'all 3 kids? What are you supposed to do? Like, come on, like, that nobody should ever go through that, bro. Like, it's oh man. But YouTube, if you made it this far in the video, go ahead and hit the like, comment, and subscribe button. Get me to 1,000 subs, man. Catch you on the next one.